Did anybody send
All right, we're ready to
somebody
get started.
Poor guy last week.
Are we on? Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Today is August the 26th. It's a beautiful, hot, humid day outside. I'm ready to call the Audit and Finance Committee meeting to order. And so I'll start by asking our majority council to please take the attendance.
Sure, Madam Chairwoman. Willingham.
Present.
Peter. Here. Bergdorf.
Here.
Clay.
Here.
Grimm.
Here.
Joyce.
Here.
Matakis.
Here.
Mayo.
Here.
And O'Brien.
Here.
All present, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other members of the legislature present this evening? Mr. Simpson?
Mr. Fine.
Mr. Fine? Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, let's get moving here. Ms. Kennedy?
The first item is approving the previous meeting minutes.
I got a motion from Mr. Peter. I got a second from Mr. Clay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
Item 2 is authorizing a one-time amnesty period for reduction of interest charged on delinquent property taxes. This item has been tabled at the request of the sponsor.
Thank you.
Moving on to current business, item 3 is authorizing an agreement with M&T Bank for banking services. The comptroller is here.
Good evening, Ms. Rizzo. How are you?
Good evening. I'm doing great. Love the
And I'm
venue.
just going to ask you.
Love the venue.
Oh, I'm going to ask you to speak up.
Okay.
I can only speak for myself. I have a hard time hearing what people are saying sometimes through the mask. So again, I don't mind letting folks know sometimes I can't understand what is being said. So speak right up.
And let me know if I'm not talking loud enough. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Audit and Finance Committee. I'm submitting a request to approve a professional services contract with M&T Bank for the county's banking services for a term of 3-year period with the option to renew for 2 one-year periods with a possible total contract term of 5 years. The decision to renew the contract will be at the sole discretion of the county. Included in my RLA submission is RFP 21-44, the M&T proposal, the proposal scorecards, and the purchasing department approval letter. Key components of the M&T submission include the proposal from the M&T requires a lowest compensating balance of $35 million, which is the current compensating balance. M&T will also pay the county interest on its $35 million compensating balance. This money is normally excluded from the traditional interest earning opportunities. There will be a periodic review for the amount of the compensating balance and interest rates paid to the county as needed, and adjustments will be made accordingly. As the county's current bank, M&T has extensive knowledge of the county's needs as defined in the scope of services in the RFP. The county has not paid cash fees for its banking services for at least 10 years. M&T Bank has an outstanding Community Reinvestment Act performance rating as evaluated by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. If the committee members have any questions, we'll entertain them at this time. Otherwise, please approve the M&T Bank as requested. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have a question?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Grimm?
Yeah, under in the RLA, in the appropriation amount, they don't have anything there. What is the appropriation amount?
Appropriation amount? Let's see, how do we don't appropriate an expense because we have an offsetting compensating balance. So you don't,
Who gets paid, I guess is my question.
nobody. So in the past, 20 years ago, we had fees that we would pay M&T Bank, and we would budget the fees. But the market has changed, so they keep the $35 million, and they earn interest on it, so we don't pay them any fee. And then we do get a slight percentage for that $35 million as well. So it's no appropriation.
Okay, so they're holding $35 million of our money?
Well, the $35 million is in our account. We don't earn interest rate. The interest, that's how they're getting paid their fees. But they are paying us a slight interest rate even on that $35 million.
What about some of the other revenues that we have? Do we invest them at all?
Well, before COVID, we actively started in January when I started. that the investment committee was reconvening, and we was working with New York Class, and we did call-arounds for interest rates, because in the past, they only vested in money market rates. But we, and my chief of staff, Ransom, have extensive investment experience, so we were investing in treasuries. So we did that until the pandemic happened, and now treasuries are nothing, so we just get money market rates. But we will plan on investing heavily in treasuries once we're able to. Right now, the market doesn't allow us, there's no reward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Bergdorf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sue, I was just flipping through this, and I was just curious. We have 47 different money market accounts and 39 checking accounts? Or is that what we had? And because you had talked about consolidating a lot of that stuff.
We had 178 bank accounts when I started.
Okay.
We now have 81 bank accounts
Okay.
for various reasons. Their different departments have to have certain bank accounts, nursing home, things of that nature. We have reduced it down to 81, and we continue to analyze that to be sure all the accounts are warranted.
Well, that just makes it easier for you if we're basically operating on a no-fee basis.
Well,
Because the number of accounts.
It doesn't affect us now because of the compensating balance is so, we got 35 million, which is extraordinary the way the RFP was written, because that's actually 200 basis points. If we use the current interest rate, they would have to hold a lot more money. So we said the minimum was 35 million. And some of the banks came back and they said, no, we can only do 50 million, or no, we can only do this. So it was very positive that we got that compensating balance so low.
Good.
So the bank accounts has a lot to do with just our fiduciary responsibility of balancing all these accounts and consolidating things.
Well, thank you very much.
Mr. Peter.
Madam Chair, I want to also thank the comptroller for including the community reinvestment account. I think that's an important consideration when we hear this stuff, but if there are no further questions, I'd like to make a motion to move this.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, I'd like to first, Mr. Fine, entertain Mr. Fine, and then I'll move on to motion in a second. Mr. Fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rizzo, I have a couple questions about, what I'm thinking about is the approach this from the perspective of ensuring that banks are investing in communities of color and low-income communities, communities that historically been redlined. We hear a lot is that people living in these communities have a difficult time getting access to capital and loans. One of the barriers that leads to a lot of disinvestment. So, I know that Mr. Peter mentioned the CRA. I want to know, do you look at the CRA reports when you make these decisions? And do you have the CRA, does the Community Reinvestment Act, those reports as part of the application?
So included in the responses from the different banks, they had to respond to that question. That is in the response for the RFP. I'm trying to find the page quick enough that tells me where that is. But it did say M&T brought $126 million in community support to the Capital Region Albany market. They also had $554,000 in charitable support, 145 nonprofit organizations through the M&T Charitable Foundation, including $425,000 to 141 organizations in Hudson Valley. They also had small business loans that's included in the RFP. So I think it was extensively looked at, and I think M&T does contribute an awful lot to our community.
Thank you. I noticed there were some numbers, the total spending they had in low to moderate income neighborhoods. It would be helpful though if we had the percentage of loans. It's hard to
Here
really
it is.
make a determination when I'm looking at that. When I see a total amount, it looks like a large amount, it's 100-something million, but I'm curious, what's the total percentage of the loans that they make low to moderate income neighborhoods? Or what's their definition as well of low to moderate income?
I can provide you that information, but I hope that won't hold up the approval for the bank to be warranted approved, because I think M&T is very much actively involved in this community, and I think we strongly looked at that they were highly rated for that. But I can get you the answer to the question.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
also is, I mean, how much, in your process for
One click,
selecting
that's what I want.
banks, how much is, community investment, equitable, fair lending practices, how much of a factor is that in your selection process?
I would say overall, we look at it. I wouldn't say that I would pick a bank because they invested, $1 trillion into our community. I mean, I have to look at the economics of the bank and our financials. People can't buy us, but M&T does contribute an awful lot to our community. So I'll have to get you those percentages.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I was impressed with M&T. I've watched them, the investments they made in the community and their involvement in the community. And they're doing at this point an impressive job. I just hope they continue to do that. So, thank you.
I just have one little small question for you, Ms. Rizzo. So this goes from 11/15/21, so, and it says 3 years. So that 11/15, is that going to run through 12/31 or 22?
So, yeah, we wanted to get us back on a calendar year, so we did take that time frame to get us back onto the 12/31.
So at the end of the first year, I just want to understand this correctly. It's for 3 years, but it's 2 one-year extensions, okay? So after the first year, I guess you have some type of evaluation that you do of the service that they provided.
Oh, to get the extension? Sure.
Okay. And so you would come back to us?
Yes.
Okay,
As we did previously when we extended it to 1 year. Yes.
okay, all right.
Definitely.
Thank you. If there are no more, I'm going to entertain questions. I'm going to entertain the motion from Mr. Peter and the second from Mr. O'Brien. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Oh, is that Larry? That's Larry, okay.
Right. Item 4 is amending the 2021 Department of Residential Healthcare Facilities budget for administrative adjustments. Hi, Mr. Slack.
Hi.
Hello, Mr. Slatsky,
Hi,
how
good
are you?
evening. Hello again. This is an annual event for the nursing home and coming in front of the Audit and Finance Committee to make adjustments to budget lines that were either underestimated or overestimated in the prior year so that we have enough dollars on every budget line to get to December 31st, 2021. Most of the adjustment deals with overtime. Our overtime was projected somewhere around $1 billion before the pandemic. And as you can see, our overtime is probably going to be more like $2 million. So we had to make adjustments within the budget to accommodate the shortfall of budget lines. So we moved dollars around. We're not increasing our budget, we're just moving money within the budget for lines that were underestimated.
Okay, so now, last month, we had one. Okay, so now this, it seems that, is it this month you're doing the CNAs?
We're one of the positions that we have filling right now are part-time certified nursing assistants. We can't even find full-time nursing assistants. Part-time are even more difficult. So we felt it appropriate at this time, being that we can't fill all of our full-time positions, to give up the part-time positions, which are 2 days a week every weekend. And hopefully, things will change by the end of the year. Those lines will be brought back to normal January 1st, meaning they'll be refunded January 1 in our 2022 budget, and we'll start all over again and hope for the best.
All right, so do we see you coming back next month for another title?
Say again?
Another title next month? Didn't we do something last month with this? Okay, all right then. Any comments? Mr. Peter?
There are no comments. I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair.
I got a motion from Mr. Peter, I got a second from Mr. O'Brien, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Item 5 is amending the 2021 Department of Residential Healthcare Facilities budget for nursing assistants.
Thank you. When the 2021 budget was created, there was actually an error made on these 5 nursing assistant budget lines, meaning they were being paid, the staff members, the proper amount, but the line that they were on were underfunded to the salary that they should have been compensated at. This was picked up when we were doing our 2022 budget and realized that these positions were underfunded, and without giving up other positions to fund these positions, they actually, these 5 lines will run out of money by December 31st, 2021. So we want to fix it now so that there's enough money on each budget line for these certified nursing assistants who are working in these lines to get them through the end of the year. And then, of course, we made the proper adjustment to their salaries for 2022. And again, this is just moving money around within our budget. We're not changing the amount of our budget.
Any comments? Mr. Grimm?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wonder, Larry, is this double unemployment, has that made it even harder to attract these lower income folks?
Oh, without a doubt. If people could stay, if people could stay home
Yeah.
and collect almost as much money as they're earning while working full-time, they will choose to stay home.
That's what I was afraid of. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. Mr. Peter?
Madam Chair, if there are no further questions, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, I got a motion to move from Mr. Peter, I got a second from Mr. Clay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Okay, thank you very
Unanimous.
much.
Thank you very much,
Have a nice
Mrs.
evening.
Platsky.
You too.
Item 6 is amending the 2021 Stormwater Coalition budget for administrative adjustments.
Ms. Heinzman, how are you this evening?
Okay. Hello. I'll just start. Okay. Yes, I'm Nancy Heinzen, Director of the Stormwater Coalition. For those of you who don't know, it's a membership-based organization that's hosted by Albany County. In 2020, 4 municipalities contributed extra membership dues to pay for a part-time Coalition Stormwater Program technician. The technician was not hired due to COVID. That unspent money went into our reserve, and the governing board of the coalition has requested that those municipalities get reimbursed. So the total amount, it would be to move $17,552 from the reserve to the miscellaneous contractual line, and that'd be used to reimburse the 4 municipalities.
Did you say we had unspent money? Is that what I
There
heard?
was unspent money that went into the reserve,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Any questions?
Any comments or questions?
I'll make a motion.
I got a motion from Mr. O'Brien. I
I'll
got a
second.
second from Mr. Peter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, unanimous. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Ms. Heinzman. Where are we? Number 7.
Item 7 is authorizing correction of the tax roll for the city of Albany.
Who's that?
Mike McGuire.
Hi, how are you this evening, Mr. McGuire?
Madam Chair, I'm doing well. How are you this evening?
Very good, very good.
Thank you for having me, members of the Audit Finance Committee. Good evening. I have one piece of business for you this evening. The City of Albany had received a application for a property tax exemption for a property owned by the Arbor Hill Development Corporation. It was received timely, but due to a clerical error, it was not applied to the property on the assessment roll. There was an erroneous tax bill for the school tax and also the property tax bill that were issued. The school tax bill went unpaid. It was re-levied onto the property tax bill. And I'm here tonight to ask for your approval to authorize a correction of those 2 tax bills. Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Grimm?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I've asked this question before, Michael, but I'm interested in your response because it seems like we have a lot of these mistakes pop up.
Yep.
And I wonder, do we know if we're missing some of the mistakes? I mean, how are these mistakes ultimately caught? And if so, how do we know we're not missing some?
Well, what ends up happening is in this case, Arbor Hill Development Corporation received a tax bill and then a letter saying that they had unpaid taxes. And then they called the city assessor's office, and the city assessor's office says, oh, we had the application, due to an error, a key punching error, whatever it might be, it did not get entered on the assessment roll for that year. So then it gets brought to my attention, and here we are.
So the taxpayer has to proactively say, hey.
Yes.
I don't know that bill.
Correct, yeah. And, with the nonprofit entities, they're aware of that because they are, generally speaking, tax exempt. So if they receive a tax bill, then, red flag gets raised. As far as individual property owners, if there's an error, they would have to look at their tax bill and review it and see if maybe there's an exemption they were entitled to that wasn't applied, and they could then contact the assessor at the municipality at that point in time.
So they would contact the town or city assessor.
Correct.
And if they agree with them, then they would come to us and say.
Correct, yes.
fix it.
Yep, they would send an application to me, and then I would make a recommendation, and then we come here, so, yeah. But, yeah. so.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You got a question?
Oh, no, Madam Chair.
Okay, I just got a quick question. I didn't hear the whole conversation between you and Mr. Grimm, so if I ask you the same thing, please forgive me.
No.
So I want to know, how do you find these errors?
So in this case, the Arbor Hill Development Corporation caught the error because they had received a tax bill. So when they get the bill, then they would contact the city assessor, who contacts me. So for the nonprofits, that's typically how we would find out about it. They get a bill that they don't feel that they should have to pay, and we go from there.
Mr. Bergdorf?
I don't know how non-governmental organizations and not-for-profits, if they have a mortgage and they have an escrow, if their bank were to get a tax bill, would their bank bring it to their attention? Or is it possible that the bank may just pay a bill erroneously, and then when you had a, end-of-the-year reconciliation statement, you'd say, whoa, we don't pay taxes?
In all the cases that I've seen, the bill is sent directly to that entity. For most residential properties, the financial institutions send my office a notice. They're required by law to send us a notice saying that property X escrow is paid by this bank, right? And then we then disseminate that information to all the municipalities. They enter what we call a bank code onto their database entry. And then when it comes to tax billing, that bank code, all those properties that are subject to that code are piled together, and one package is sent to those banks. So the banks will tell us if they are paying that escrow for that entity. So if that bank code is not on the property for whatever it might be, then the bill would just be sent to the property owner by default. Okay. So with, I'm not too sure how it would work for mortgages for these not-for-profits or NGOs. I'm not too familiar with that process, but I don't think we would receive a notice indicating that there was an escrow for the organization, unless there was some other circumstances involved with that. But I haven't seen one where we sent it to a bank to be paid, or the taxing jurisdiction, the municipality or the city sent one to them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Motion? Ms. Lakakis?
No, I was going to second.
Okay, so I got a motion from Mr. Peter.
You said I wasn't fast enough last time.
Yeah, you gotta be quicker than that. Okay, so I got a motion from Mr. Peter. I got a second from Ms. Lakakis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 8, let me see, we have Dave.
Item 8 is authorizing the conveyance of real property located at 65 First Street in the city of Albany.
Madam Chairwoman, this is for, as was just stated, for the transfer of 65 First Street.
Is that you talking, Mr. Riley?
That is me,
Okay.
ma'am.
I couldn't tell.
There's not much to see here. You can tell by the top, he's got the hair. So our office received a request from one of the neighbors. Basically, he wants to beautify the neighborhood, clean this up. All the details are in there. I've actually driven past, and this guy takes really nice care of his place, so we think it's going to a good owner. The back taxes were fully settled, $64,618.26, which is already on deposit.
That's pretty good. Okay. All right, that's, to the tune of 65,000.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, good. Any questions? Mr. Grimm?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm still unclear, guys, as to when does the land bank take a property and when do you guys handle the property?
So this property was, I believe, authorized to go to the land bank. This would fall under the category of a property Okay, yep. This is basically a property that, before we authorized to go to the land bank, when they reviewed the property, it was going to require more investment into the property than it would be worth after. And because it's a neighbor and it's kind of a labor of love, when we received the request for the property, we went to the land bank and said, are you okay with this transfer? And basically kind of flipped where we typically send the property to them and let them run the sale. They said, because it's gonna take more resources for us to process and dispense, then we would have a challenge with getting rid of it. This individual has a vested interest in the property, and therefore, we accepted the offer. And because they were willing to make the county whole for the amount of taxes, fees, and interest that have been owed, it made sense for us to come to you and seek approval.
Okay, so there's no hard and fast rule about what goes to you and what goes to the land bank. In some instances, you have.
No, there is basically, this is what I'll say, any direct transfer that we come to you with is going to get approval from the land bank first. So any property we foreclose on is either going to go to the land bank, or they're gonna say, no, Mike. It's rare that it's a building, I'll be honest with you, although it's happened a couple times. But frequently, I come to you on a regular basis, and it's like a lot that's next to somebody's home, and they say, Mike, there's no point in us taking this, it's gonna cost us a couple $1,000s in processing. So then I would come to you and say, okay, let's cut the middleman out here, it's gonna shave a couple months off the process, get it to the neighbor, and so on and so forth. That's basically what's happening here, except it just has a building on it.
Mr. Peter?
And the other thing I think that the county exec's office does a good job on.
Matt, speak up.
Sorry. One of the other things that they do to make sure is that, they always send us a report if the people have blight or other
Yes.
foreclosure issues. So there's the pre-sort of scan process of making sure that
Correct.
we're not putting it back into the hands of someone who's going to abuse the process.
Yep.
And we get those forms now, which I appreciate. We've had that for about a year and a half now, which helps us at least get through that. So that's another part of the process that I know you guys do.
Yeah.
Which I'm grateful for.
Thank you, Mr. Peter. Mr. Bergdorf?
Quick question, I'm not sure, I kind of looked through this yesterday, but this is number 65, and the people who want to buy it are 69, and I'm looking at the map.
It's 2 doors down.
There's a sliver at 67. Is that owned by another individual?
Yes. There's a row house in between.
Okay, so, do they have any right to this, or they didn't express an interest?
They didn't express interest, right, that's correct.
Okay. And do we know what they, I read somewhere that they were talking about community garden or something like that.
That's another property that they own on the block. That is at 56 and a half First Street.
56.
56 and a half. So we have 55, 56 and a half, 57.
Okay. All right, I just didn't know if that was an active parcel number 67.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and, okay, good. All right, I appreciate the comments on this, and this is something that we do see, every month. And you do go through the same process with explaining to us how you do it, which, sometimes that happens.
That's fine.
I've heard it enough that I don't. have it
We'll review.
re-explained. So, but, thank you.
There are no other comments. I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair.
I got a motion. I got a second from Mr. Mayo. All those in favor? Opposed? He waited, Lynn. You didn't?
I know, next time, we'll get it
Thank you.
right. It's hard with the mask, you can't really see the facial expressions.
Like Bill always has my back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'm up. I was so excited, I jumped the gun.
All right, now, here it is.
Item 9 is authorizing the Albany County Executive to submit multiple applications for various projects through the New York State 2021 Consolidated Funding Application CFA process.
Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is our annual request where we overview the applications that are submitted through the state's CFA process. There were originally 6 that were going to be proposed. One ended up not being submitted just because as we dove more into the details, it wasn't a great fit. That's the last one, which was the recreational trails. Just the kind of parks and trails they were looking for this year weren't a great match for
64,000 or a
the,
million?
what we have available, but the other 5 have been submitted. 2 related to the water purification district,
And this one.
a local government efficiency grant proposal from the health department, and 2 energy related CFAs, the one a Flex Tech, which is an energy efficiency program, and the other a climate smart communities, which has to do with, there's a variety of actions under that one, but basically greenhouse gas inventory and planning. So happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Grimm?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The digester didn't work out, and I know a part of that, we're trying to relieve some of the sludge issues. Are some of these applications, are they speaking to that issue? We're trying to deal with an alternative way to deal with the sludge?
Yes, and I brought a star witness. For those 2, we have. So those first 2, obviously, came from the water purification district, so we thought it was appropriate to have Angelo here to answer those questions.
What is he gonna talk about?
Right, so the sludge processing grant application is specific to basically an alternate to the digester. So we're basically looking to evaluate current incineration operations and kind of associated equipment. And then basically, again, develop that project. So we've already reached out to a vendor. We kind of have our cost estimates from them, but we need to do kind of the engineering piece of it. So it's really kind of put us in a position to start the evaluation process and then move into design on that system.
All right, because you said we have to do something with the sludge, with the digester issue, and you're moving pretty quickly here. This is a clear attempt to move quickly to make sure we have the right alternatives.
Yes, yep. Yeah, I mean, the incinerators are aged, so we certainly need to move on any improvements on those systems. Otherwise, we risk kind of doing emergency work, and we don't want to be in that position.
That's good to see. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Mr. Bergdorf?
Madam Chair. Angelo, for the 2 EFC ones, these are engineering planning grants. What kind of magnitude of money could they potentially give you?
We're estimating about, I'll say 50 to 70 is kind of my estimate on kind of what the expected effort's going to be on the evaluation side of it.
For each one of them?
Yeah, each one of them.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if there are no further questions. I'd love to make that motion.
I have a motion to move from Mr. Matthew Peter, and I have a second from Mr. William Clay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll say do it, Lynn.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Don't give up, Lynn. Don't give up.
All right, item 10 is a public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant Microenterprise Program.
Thank you. This item is a closeout public hearing. This is the final step in a rather lengthy process required to close out a CDBG microenterprise grant that some legislators who were here at the time may remember approving. That just the way they are set up, you do a pre-application public hearing, and then at the end of the program, once everything's been done, you are required by the federal statute to have a closeout hearing, which essentially reflects on how the program went. In this case, the program went well. We awarded 5 businesses these small business microenterprise grants. All were able to, fully federally funded, and all were able to meet the requirements for state and federal reimbursement. I believe 6 years later, 3 out of 5 are still in business, which for microenterprises is actually a very good ratio. And happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. Does anybody else have a question? Mr. Bergdorf?
Are all of these people still in business?
No, 3 out of 5,
Are still in business?
yes.
Was that a yes?
3 out of 5,
3 out of 5 are in business.
3 out of
3 out of
5
5.
are still
Thank
in
you.
business.
That's 2.
Who actually makes the selection for these?
at the time, this was run through at the time they were known as the Albany Colony Chamber, now the Capital Region Chamber, and they had expertise that helped to evaluate. Each business had to submit their financials, submit their business plan, submit their hiring plan, and also commit to enrolling in a business course, for lack of a better
I
word.
mean, is this something now that, if it were to happen again, would be under our economic development
Yeah, I think
umbrella?
that's fair to say, yep.
Okay, because, I take a look at the grants that we gave people and the things that we did, and I look at these now, and people are getting $35,000 and $40,000 for 1- and 2-person employee organizations. And they're all over the county, which is a good thing, but it seems to have been a very, very selective program, which I remember when we had the public hearing for it, but nobody spoke, and I guess you had to know or be a part of the chamber.
I don't know that that's true. I didn't run the program.
Yep.
But I think it was very widely advertised, promoted. There was a lot of press at the time. I've seen old press releases. It was a classic CDBG, which means it was only eligible for non-entitlement communities. So Albany, City of Albany and Town of Colony, obviously 2 of our bigger municipalities with a lot of our businesses were not eligible.
Right.
That kind of defined, taking those out, it was, like you said, a very, I think, strong geographic spread.
Yeah, or Ravenna, Voorheesville.
But no, I mean, listen, you're never gonna
Altamont.
inform every business in the county about something like this, but we certainly tried to get the word out at the time in a number of ways.
I was just making the point that these were very generous awards for micro enterprises.
That's a micro.
Yeah, I think it's micro and small business. They're pretty, that's pretty standard for what you've seen with this grant program across other municipalities. They range from 15 to 50, I would say. But that's, point taken.
Okay, so I just have 2 questions, then I'll allow Mr. Fine to ask his. Now, you said there's 3 out of 5 that are still operating?
Yep.
Did the other ones succumb to the pandemic or what?
One did. I was hoping we wouldn't go here. One, actually, the sole proprietor sadly passed away. And that was one of the ones that closed. The other, either, I believe they moved out of the area. But that
Okay.
or they just couldn't make it business-wise.
All right, my second question is this. How often does this micro enterprise grant program come up?
You can apply for it on an annual basis. And part of the reason, to wrap this up is if we wanted to apply for this in the future, they're obviously going to want to look that your previous program has been fully concluded. So getting this done would help us apply for any future opportunities that come through, the Economic Development Program at HCR, which is the state agency that gives out the CDBG funds.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fine, are there any other questions from Mr. Grimm?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm into practical outcomes, clear outcomes, and I'm wondering, is there anywhere in the paperwork, I've been looking through it, how many jobs were created from these grants?
Yeah,
And how much
it's
sales tax, are there those kind of things?
the jobs, which is, CDBG has very specific, what they call national objectives. So I think those objectives line up with ours, but they're not always, they're focused on jobs, and that's a good thing. But particularly this grant fund was geared towards LMI jobs, low to moderate income. That's what you had to do to satisfy, basically to get reimbursement. So in the backup on each one, there is a form that shows either the 1 or 2 people that they hired as a result of the grant funds that they receive. And it's not like 100 one-to-one, like, here's 35,000 for that person's salary, but it's, here's grant funds that allow you to, it could be salary, but it could also be, we need this new piece of equipment, or we need this infrastructure investment that's gonna allow us to hire another person. And so, you know, that's a big check that, or box that they, the feds and the state want you to check, is that hiring. And
Because I looked through, I didn't see it, because, do you know how many actual jobs were created in these 5 grants?
It's either 1 or 2 in each, so I'd say 7. It's, if you look at the backup, there's I can't remember the acronym
Well,
for
you
the
should show
form.
me later or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Which for the scale of the businesses and the grants, that's what was anticipated.
Mark, it's section 4, job information on each,
Yeah.
on each set of printouts.
What's the title of the thing? Because I got a bunch of them.
Section 4, job information on each one of them.
Okay.
It's in the longer recipient form.
Okay,
I'll look, I'll
are
find
we
it.
good, Mr.
Thanks,
Chairman?
Madam.
Mr.
Yeah.
Fine.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
The recipient forms in this section there.
Under what, though?
Businesses that receive grants
fourth one.
by
The
people of
last one.
color or certified MWBEs.
Okay.
I don't believe that they were. Again, I didn't run the grant
Section
program,
4.
but
Okay,
I
thanks.
don't believe that they were.
Do you know if there was any outreach specifically maybe to communities of color, to certified MWBEs?
I don't, I can certainly look back and see, talk to the person who ran the program. Based on the eligible municipalities, you know, there certainly still could have been. A lot of the, well, I'll just leave that there. But I can check back.
Thank you. Mr. Peter.
Madam Chair, if there are no further questions.
Second.
Excuse me, Ms. Lakakis.
I'm done. I was gonna second his.
Okay,
apologize.
I gotta be faster, I gotta be faster. Mr. Peter?
I would like to say.
I got a motion from Mr. Peter.
I'll second.
I got a second from Ms. Lakakis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn. Go, Bill.
I got a motion to adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Luke, I want to ask you something. I was going to ask you publicly, but no, I jumped the gun.